Thank you everyone for showing up. If you want to just start off by writing in the chat box where you know who you are, maybe what camp you're with, where you're from in the world, where you are at right now in the world, whatever is helpful, just so that we know who is here. That'd be great. It'd be also great if you could add your moniker and your camp name. And your sector that your camp traditionally is in your actual uh, name, rename yourself for that. That would be excellent. Hello, everyone who's joined us in the last couple minutes. Awesome. Hi, Joel. Hey, Papa Bear. Hey, that guy. Tiffany. We're just waiting for a couple more people to join us before we get started. Hey, John, David, and George, and Kevin. All right, Monday regular. I just disabled the waiting room so people can just automatically join us at this point. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Level. I am the placement manager for Black Rock City. It's nice to see everyone here. Thanks for joining us. I know that this is the third iteration of the Campfire talk. I know some folks have been here from the start, but it looks like there's a lot of new faces as well. So just want to tell you a little bit about what we hope to do tonight and what we try to do every time we meet. The Campfire Talks is a new program, obviously virtual, that we're trying to bring together every month in order for camps to share ideas, learn from each other, tell stories, make connections, especially in a year without a burn. We think this is really critical and important. And I know every year we do a theme camp symposium, which gets hundreds of people to show up. But we're trying to actually spread the wealth throughout the year so that it doesn't all just get concentrated in one weekend, and we can kind of keep the flame going throughout the year. So we have a really fabulous team of volunteers. Maybe wave to the camera if you're a volunteer on this effort. There's regular, Braddy Cat, Epiphany, Monday, Sander. And then we also have some volunteer panelists tonight that we've assembled. So I will introduce them very soon. But the first thing before I get started with that is to tell you a little bit about how we participate. So for folks who have joined us a little bit late, please introduce yourselves in the chat, include your name, your camp, and your sector. If you also can rename yourself so that we can see that in your profile, that would be fantastic. If you have a question, we hope everyone can remain on mute. This is just a regular Zoom meeting. If you have a question or a comment or a story to tell, you can either go to the the reactions button down at the very bottom of your Zoom and just raise your hand. We'll notice that and call on you there. You can also type in hand in the chat box. We have a couple people checking that out to make sure we get a queue going. So the hope is that the panelists will start off the conversation, but you can join in as well. So whether you have a question or something interesting to share yourself, the knowledge is really shared. It's not really just the folks we pulled together. So please participate that way. So what are we doing tonight? We are calling this Burn Baby Burn, Fire in Your Theme Camp, Do's, Don'ts, and Don'ts. So the point is we want to talk about fire. There's obviously fire that burns, art that burns in the open playa. And actually there's an Art Speaks talk tomorrow about that, where Katie Hazard, the director of the art department, and the folks over there are coming together to talk about art. But today we want to talk about camps and how does fire look in camps? What are tips and tricks for people learning how to do it? And we have a great panel here who I'll introduce in a second. I want to start off though by sharing a quick poll about whether you have fire in your camp or not. So I'm going to launch it just to see what the kind of level of experience is here. Feel free to answer. You can answer, actually check off all the boxes if you want. Do you have fire in your camp? No? Yes? How is it? I know not all the options in the world are here, but this gives us a little sense of what it looks like. All right, there are 39 people on this call, and most of you have filled this out. So I'll queue it up for 5 more seconds, and I'm closing it. So it looks like 43% of you, 15 out of 35, have a burn barrel in your camp, while others, a smaller proportion, have some other type of flame effect like a poofer. And then about half of the folks here don't have it, but have some interest in it or want to add it. So that's great. I think hopefully we can all take away something and take away some learning tonight. All right, I'm gonna close that. We're gonna move on. So like I said, we have a panel here. We have some folks from Illumination Village who are longtime fire camp. We also have some folks from Lakes on the Playa, which is based in the Midwest and brings their fire to Burning Man as well. And then we have some folks from the Fire Arts and Safety team. So I'm just gonna go through each of them, call your names out, and then you can just introduce yourself and say who you are and something about yourself. That would be great. So why don't we start with the folks from Lakes on the Playa. We have Grumps and Rick and Matt, I think. So go ahead and unmute yourself and say hello.
Well, Grumps is Matt. So.
Yeah.
Grumps is Matt, sorry.
And that's the really polite version of my name. I'm Matt Cruiseweiser. I'm one of the camp leads with a camp called Syncytium that is part of Lakes on the Playa Village. We do a fair amount of fire. We burn a lot of propane, at least. I don't know if we do that much fire. Come from Detroit area, so technically a little bit west, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Most of us do, and then we have people from around the world in our camp as well.
I'm Rick McGarry. Same thing as Matt.
We literally live next door to each other and share a workshop. So,
yeah,
awesome. We'll be hearing a lot more from you in a bit. I'll move on now to Shah from Illumination Village.
Hi there. I'm Shah. I'm been the mayor of Illumination, or I've been half of the mayor team of Illumination Village for the last 3 years. This coming year, I'll be doing it solo. And I'm also a member of the Flaming Lotus Girls. We've got over 40 different flame effects in any given year that might be in the village. So we've run the gambit of stuff. And I typically personally run fire crews and organization. I'm not actually a fabricator, but I think I've got a lot to share.
Thanks, Shah. Well, can't wait to hear all that. Probably an hour and a half isn't enough for it all, but we'll try. All right, and we have 2 folks from FAST who also, live in camps as well. But I will start with Twister.
I'm Twister, longtime burner, been on the FAST team for a while, the only pro-fireball bureaucracy I'm aware of. So we want to help you burn. We just need to do it so no one dies. It's easy.
That's a great goal. Don't die.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have Bacon also from FAST.
Hi, I'm Bacon from FAST. I actually spend got a reprieve this year, but I'm the one that spends my year round worrying about who's going to burn down their theme camp first and why it's going to be my fault. So please don't be that person. But I like to make as much fire as we can in camps and as safe as we can in camp. So that's me.
Thanks, everyone. If you showed up a little bit after we did introductions and you're just here in the audience, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. So we're gonna kind of have a panel discussion, and I'll invite folks who aren't part of the panel to also contribute if you feel like it makes sense. But let's let the panelists start first. I guess with both Lakes on the Playa and Illville, can you tell us a little bit about how, like, the genesis of like how you brought fire to the Playa? And this may, predate you, or maybe just a long story from a long time ago. But I'm curious, other camps bring bars and workshops and all sorts of other things. What is it about fire that's drawn your camp, and why do you bring that to the burn? Shao, do you want to start?
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about that because Illumination Village has been around for 22 years now, and I was not there for the genesis. I have built a few flame effects, but as far as getting them into the village, I think maybe Twister might have more to say about that personally. He's a member of our village, has been there longer.
What's our slogan, Shah?
We have many of them.
We're a
drinking village with a fire problem, I think, is the most prominent one.
I gotta go. Hold on.
Drinking village with a fire problem. That's great.
We definitely have a fire problem.
All right. Well, it looks like Twister had to hop off for a second. So, Rick and Grumps, what's your story?
I think we're about the same.
Yeah. Well, we actually, I went to my first burn and our camp didn't have any fire, and I thought that really sucked. So I went and met up with Dave X and Propaniac in their workshop that they do together, and then we went kind of crazy and kind of added quite a bit of flame effect, and started at 0 and ended up with burning 1,200 gallons of propane, 1,200 pounds of propane a night. So reasonable, not huge, but reasonable.
Yeah, it started.
Yeah, and I noticed there's flames in your background. Is that Lakes on the Playa camp? That's
at Lakes of Fire, actually. It's just our dome when we were kind of stupid and put a poofer up on the top of it.
Kind of
yeah.
There's a lot of poofers. We have a lot of poofers, and then those got kind of boring. So then we tried to get more creative and make more artistic art, fire stuff. And now we have I don't know, we probably have a dozen plus effects now.
Something like that.
Probably more.
There's a lot of them rusting behind my house.
Nice. Twister, go for it. Welcome back.
I'm saying I have a lot of stuff rusting behind my house too. I don't know what else to say here right now. Mostly I'm interested in what other people want to know.
Okay. Great. So, obviously it sounds like I'm actually curious then. There's some folks here that want to bring flame effects to your camp. Is there a question that someone in the audience might have about getting started? Feel free to unmute yourself. All right, maybe not yet.
There was a high level. This is C-Rex from Mystic.
Hey.
We just want to know what things we need to do to be safe, because typically we have fire performers in our Wednesday night party, and last year we were told that's bad. So we'd love to know what are the safety things that we could do to improve that situation so we don't have to alter that.
Bacon, go for it.
Well, first I'd like to say that technically fire performers don't fall underneath us at FAST. That we're more into the propane and stuff like that. So this is coming more from my personal experience as I manage fire performers in a giant antique building full of, a couple thousand people. I think the first thing to do is to sit down and make sure that you work with your fire performers and work with, them to make sure that they're following the safety protocols for that type of people. Personally, like I maintain 2 types of fire extinguishers, on either sides of performance spaces. I make sure that our fueling areas have, fire extinguishers that are away from people and stuff like that. And there's hopefully, knock on wood, going to be some new fire code coming that is going to give a little bit stronger criteria for fire dancer, fire performers on how to appropriately handle those situations. But I think the other biggest thing is to really look at is like, I catch at Burning Man, the worst offending as far as fire performing is what your performers are wearing. Because somebody loves to be like, oh, I want to come perform. And if they're altered or wearing something flammable, that's where I would suggest a camp, manager to be like, I appreciate your zealous. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but not here, please. And please don't anywhere else. Because, fire performers who follow the guidelines and practice appropriate safety procedures, are overall a pretty safe group of people, but it's the people who are newbies or people who think that they're better than the safety procedures that are really, really dangerous. Talking to specialty insurance, who insures at least all my performers here in the Midwest, everybody I've ever dealt with, their insurance has come from specialty because they make people be, also insured to protect me from liability on top of our liability insurance. Specialty has never had a fire performer claim. Given fire performers burn themselves a little bit all the time, they're not making a claim for that, but they've never had a big claim for it. Jugglers and tumblers, on the other hand, those are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones that get claims on. But it's, take some time and talk to somebody that's doing it right. Find out like who's running the troops that's, in your areas at home, and spend some time with them at home so you can see like what is not right and what is right. Because some of it has to do with like knowing tools, like you shouldn't use that tool that way. But you want to make sure that you could extinguish a fire quickly and easily. As far as like your camp, I would say treat it like you would any other, flame device. Like make sure you're not near tents. Don't let fire performers perform next to the propane for your grills. I mean, not that a fire torch whacking a propane tank is gonna like set it on fire, but an ounce of safety, and it's going to stop the Karen in the crowd from being like, oh my God, the propane tank, get a Ranger. So if you apply those common sense things, make sure they're not near anywhere flammable. And when you look at fire tools, a general rule is anything that's in the immediate control of the performer, you want at least 2, if not 3 times that distance away from that performer from space. And any tool that a performer is not in immediate control of, like a staff or a hoop or something like that, I normally like to have, at least 40 or 50 feet, because you want enough space that when that prop comes loose, the fire safeties can get to it, and make sure that the fire safeties, you have enough in the position well enough to capture those tools. If you got someone that's going crazy with a hula hoop, you got one person with a towel and they're going crazy and it goes off to the right, can that person catch that hoop before it goes and lights that fur ball of a participant on fire? I mean, but like I said, it's not our thing at FAST, so I don't get to regulate it. But from my experiences back here in the less dusty world, I mean, if I had to give a very short 2-floor elevator talk, that'd be it.
That was great. I hope folks are taking notes. That was a lot of information there. Rick and Grumps, I think you had your hand raised. So did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize a few of those points, I guess I fire spin a lot too. I led a conclave group, the Detroit Dragons, that actually got to perform last year. And we last burn. And a lot of those people camped, like I think all of them except for one camped with us too. So that was a huge plus because everyone's fire safety trained, at least in that group. But yeah, having more than one safety is great. I would say to try to find your local burn groups, like Bacon said, or local conclave groups, and get like fire safety trained, but for more than one person, there's like a lot of variance in what's acceptable to some people.
Just to be clear, like our performers are part of Pyronauts under Batra, so they're super professionals. I think the question was more directed at if it's a distance thing on our stage performing in the show, like what are the things that will become standard that we could do so that we could continue to have that performance.
So it's a bacon thing.
Nope, it's not a bacon thing.
Yeah,
it's not a bacon thing, and like even when the code comes down, like what Conclave will say is the rules, and like what we say are the rules might be different than the code. And also the thing is that like we have a habit of not saying you need to be 21.5 feet away, because there might be situations where 21.5 feet isn't appropriate, so it's about building that education. And I know you're like, well, the troop that's coming in, they're super professional. I've seen troops that are very professional get comfortable and make really dumb mistakes, or get excited and make really dumb mistakes. So as camp, managers or, camp producers or whatever, I really encourage everybody, just like with fires, flame effects and everything like that, even though you may bring a flame effects operator or something like that, someone who's bringing an effect, is get versed in it yourself. I don't know if in the series there has been or will be something with Conclave, but, get versed in the safety of yourself so that when someone's like, no, this is safe. I do this all the time, this is safe. When someone says, I do this all the time, this is safe, that's the moment I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna open up my clipboard. I'm gonna get out a checklist and go a little bit slower, because I'm like, oh, you aren't worried. So now I need to be worried for both of us. So never trust someone who walks in your camp, or even if you've had a long-standing arrangement that like everything is gonna go right. And then maybe they have a new performer who's come on who, he's got a cowboy hat and cowboy boots at home and just is just a wildly, crazy shooter, and does things a little bit differently on the wild side. And fire safety doesn't have a lot of space for wild sides. We got space for fun. We got space for illusions of danger, but not actual danger. So I think it's really important to do that. And like I said, I can't tell you, 20 feet's a great number. I got a fire marshal at one point who was like, 21 feet. 21 feet is great. 21 feet is great for one tool, but excessive for the other. Like I need 21 feet for someone with pan torches. Like they are physically, like they couldn't burn themselves with it if they really tried. Hand torches. That's excessive. Someone with a whip, you're just gonna let me do that with 21 feet, huh? Yeah, okay. I'm not gonna do that with 21 feet. So yeah, it's about learning for your guys' own safety so that you can make those judgment calls and extend things. Because wind changes, just like with flame effects and open burns, like it could be a really windy night out and someone wants to fire breathe, and they're like, I'm confident I can do this. But it might be something you want to come up and be like, you see those people up there? I have a whole row of people wearing sequin. We're not doing fire breathing tonight on my stage because I'm not calling for 7 burn victims tonight. Because that, it can blow, you can blow back at them. It can, if the wind, Playa, sometimes the wind decides to change direction more often than I do when I'm trying to order food. So, it's something you want to be informed of, and be an informed customer is basically what you want to do when you have a fire performer coming into your space. Because when it all goes wrong, it's going to be the Rangers and BLM and ESD looking at you going, what happened here? Not looking at the fire performer because they're down in medical. So that's kind of why I would say inform yourself. So maybe the rules that Conclave say aren't enough for you.
Birdman asked a question in chat saying, why not bigger and what effects? That might be a good next thing to talk about.
If I could just jump in on the fire performance for 1 second though. C-Rex, you said the word stage. And, most of our fire performers are just on bare playa with the perimeter. I don't know who took exception to your fire performers, but a structured fire is one of our nightmares. So if you had them on a stage with anything around them that was potentially flammable, that would be troubleshooting the issue you had the last time.
All right. Hey, I'd like to interrupt on myself too and kind of comment to you, Bacon, that I like that coaching on situational awareness, that even though you might start with a great, entertainment, it goes awry for some reason or not. And there have to be people that are watching for that and aware when it goes wrong. So good situational coaching on the fire arts, I thought. I have another question, and that is, it's kind of multifold. I'm a lead out at the airport theme camp. We call ourselves the Black Rock Travel Agency. And we're a work camp, but we're a theme camp too. We put up the spaceport, and last year there's several issues. And last year we had a few on more on the wild side, but they were non-sanctioned flame effects. Just guys with poofers. And so that was going to come up from a camp leadership standpoint. How do you maintain what's the experience you have, whoever wishes to answer, of maintaining the esprit de corps and the chill atmosphere, and at the same time you've got people who apparently are doing something safe. It's just that they didn't tell anybody they were going to do it. It's kind of like rogue, and FAST hasn't approved it, and it's not scheduled. There's no safety plan, perimeter watch, stuff like that. And also, in light of this, our camp wants to move into some flame effects. We have a huge postage stamp out there. I mean, placement. We've got a lot of frontage. We've got a lot of people that come out there. So we'd like to do flame effects. There's some people that are interested in doing that at BRTA. Also, we think we want to get away from the burn barrel. And the reason is because the generation of the MOOP and the tonnage of wood that we have to bring in, and we're thinking of going to propane for a large campfire flame effect. So it's kind of multitude of questions that our camp is going through as it moves forward and gets hopefully better, provides more gifting to the city.
Thanks, Birdman. That's 3 questions in one. So I think Shaw and Bacon wanted to take them, and I'll try to make sure we get to all 3. So Shaw, you want to?
I just wanted to answer that first part, that it's great you want to be casual and chill with everybody and cool, but when someone's brought a flame effect that has not been approved by FAST, it is not on my insurance records for the insurance company. You kind of just have to draw a hard line and be like, hey dude, this is how it was supposed to go. We communicated a lot with everyone in our village beforehand that you needed to tell us at least what your intentions are if you're going to bring any flames at all. And you didn't tell us that. And so you cannot light this. It is just a hard line on that.
Yeah, and I think that really applies not just to flame effects, right? That if someone's bringing something rogue that isn't part of the plan, there does need to be a final decision maker around, can that happen within your camp or not? And that's, it's far more than just flames, but really important because of fire. Bacon, looked like you had a response. Oh, you're muted. So
the first thing I would say is that if you have someone that's rogue in your camp, you can reach out to a ranger, you can reach out to, I assume, even your placement lead, or you can stop into FAST and let us know, and I will gladly come out there and be the bad guy. I'm a really, really nice bad guy. I may have been called the nicest jerk that a lot of people have ever met, but the fact of the matter is that I don't have any space in my worry about somebody who wants to go out there and do something rogue because they're not doing it, innately safely. Now, does that say that I'm going to come out there and be like, you can't do this, and you put this in your car and I never want to see it again? Our goal is to make as much fire as possible. So I'm going to go out there and work with them and be like, okay, here's how we get you rolling through the steps. We have walk-in applications. We have ways we can do this. I mean, I do not guarantee, but I have gone through giant hoops to find people the things they need to be appropriate so that we can get them. I do not personally run around and Playa for you, but I may send you to go see Grumps and be like, go ask that guy. maybe carry a taller green bottle in your hand when you do. He may have the thing you need left on a counter when you leave that bottle. I don't know how things work. You know, people leave bottles of Jameson's all over the place. People walk off with people's propane supplies. Flamethrowers happen. You know, flame effects happen. But, you know, if they don't have fire extinguishers or something like that, maybe they have to go back to town to get it. But no, we do not want anything rogue. And if it's not a situation where you feel, or like if you've been like, hey, don't do that, or hey, you need to go to the artery and do an application for that before you play with that, and they're like, bro, it's cool, I do this every year, then I'm more than glad to come out. And then, you know, if I go out there and like I've got to talk to them twice and they're like, bro, I'm fine, then Rangers will talk to them. And then if it's a bigger problem, then ESD will come and talk to them. And then everyone will talk to them until they are just so annoyed that they just don't want to do that anymore. The other thing that I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that if you're out at the airport, because I don't go out there very often because there's not a lot of fire out there, that there's coordination with the airport and some different rulemaking with the airport because you guys are so proximate there. So I know that we've had maybe one or two pieces that were in centrally located places, but because you guys are remote from the city and so close to the airport, there's a different set of rules out there that I haven't had to deal with a lot of, actually, because generally we don't see a lot of fire out there. But I do know that like the application process, there's some extra hoops for people that are near the airport, I'm pretty sure. I don't think you can take the giant, you know, towering cathedral of fire out near the airport and it's an okay thing. But yeah, if you know, you apply for it in an application, you come through and we work out the process and, you know, whatever we have to do to go to the airport, sure that we can work something out. But that makes an even bigger risk out to the airport. You know, not only are they not being safe, but someone goes out there, shoots off a giant fireball and it messes up somebody's airplane stuff, you know, that could be real bad. I don't know about airplane stuff, but I know that stuff.
I think if folks have really specific questions about your camp's peculiar issues, like we'll have follow-up information and emails that we can share with you all afterwards. I kind of want to pull the conversation back to a broader topic, but I see Twister. So I want to do Twister and then I'll kind of pull throw out another question.
So the last conversation was about rogue flame effects and what happens then. And as Bacon said, we'll do our best to help you actually not be rogue on the Playa. But from the point of view of theme camps and running a theme camp, the best thing you can possibly do is create a culture in your camp of identifying the fire ahead of time, putting it all in your application. And that way we see it ahead of time and we can talk to you about it and figure out if there might be problems. And that way everyone has more fun on the Playa. So this is a culture issue.
Thanks, Twister. And that application actually lives within the placement questionnaire. So if you say you're going to have fire effects, you check a box that says yes. There's a couple other follow-up questions, and then FAST will get in touch with you to help facilitate that process. So in case you're wondering, where do I apply? But I mentioned pulling it out a little bit more. I think it seems like folks are here wondering, what are the first steps to take to start fire? Should you have an internal expert? Should you just fill out the application form? And maybe from the theme camps that have fire, from Lakes on the Playa or Illumination Village, I'm curious, how would you advise people that are like, I don't know anything about fire, I don't even have fire expert, what do? I just want to be cool and have fiery things going on. Rick and Grumps.
I think like finding someone to work with initially is probably the most important thing, because I wouldn't really recommend trying to make your own flame effect watching like some random person's YouTube video or something. And also like the Propaniac workshop has been really great for some people. I didn't get a chance to go to it, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. I know Matt did. And just like starting small, you know, like there's a lot that you can make out of just like scrap metal and like random pipes you can get at like Lowe's or something, you know. Do you have anything, Matt?
Yeah, no, Rick nailed it. I mean, the thing that most people don't understand is how tight is tight and things like that, you know, how to cut pipes and thread them, you know, sort of basic metalworking workshop things. So that helps to have somebody that knows what they're doing and has, you know, some metal making experience. I think also, you know, we do plumbing for fun, so there's that. It's just a lot of learning the same techniques that go into running gas line. I'm not exactly the same, but things that you would do to make sure you can connect a gas stove in your house are kind of the same thing you would do here, without saying that that's exactly the same thing.
That's great. So yeah, find an expert and learn as much as you can. Twister, I saw you wave or.
Oh, I was just supporting the idea, Davex and Propaniac, not this year, but they typically go around doing flame effects workshops. And if you want a one-stop shop for figuring out everything that you need to do it safely, that's the place to go. There are some other people that do it. Behind everything we do is something called NFPA 160, which is the national code for flame effects in front of a live audience. You can always go to nfpa.org and look at it. I guarantee your head will explode. We do our best to simplify it, but it's meant for firemen and stuff. There we go. Thank you, Brady. So everything we do has got a technical base to it and a legal base to it. These are the things that keep the BLM and the insurance companies happy. And knowing that those are there and that you have to actually comply with them is a good part of building your effect.
Thanks, Twister. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious for the folks with fire experience, do you have kind of do's and don'ts of fire that you can share with the folks that have joined us today, or even a story about someone that really failed in the preparation of fire, so we don't make that mistake? Or even in your learning process. So Shah, thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah, just there's so many things to consider, but one that I find consistently falls to the back burner until we're on our way is transportation. How are you going to put your flame effect safely into a vehicle so that it doesn't, you don't generate leaks in it, in the parts that are already fabricated that you cannot fix on Playa, and keeping that safe. And then what you do with that transportation equipment once you're on Playa, as far as like organizing your map, and keeping your camp visually interesting and exciting and not full of infrastructure. That was all I wanted.
Those are great tips. Rick and Grumps, looks like you raised your hand a minute ago.
Something that I've learned is scheduling like your fire watch sometimes gets complicated because people don't show. So kind of like scheduling double the people you need has been really helpful, because sometimes people don't show up for that 3 a.m. fire watch and it sucks to have to turn everything off. And yeah, transport's a tricky thing too, because like I built like this big tower and I made it flat pack, and that was really great, but then I kept building more work and like started caring more about the time it took to set up the effects. So it's kind of a battle of like, how much space it takes up versus like ease of assemble is different.
Weight is also a big thing with transport. So the more steel you throw on a box truck, the less you can actually put on a box truck, it turns out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And something for like camps that aren't on like Esplanade or aren't great, don't have the most amazing placement. It's a lot to carry your propane tanks around. Like the first time we brought effects to the Big Burn, we were like, what, like K or F or something?
Yeah.
And we were like trying to find rides to like lug our 600-pound tanks around or whatever. And it just like made us kind of rethink things. Like we don't need to run poofers every night. We couldn't because we couldn't get the propane. So it's something to think about your placement and like how to actually like pick up the propane.
Yeah, and I think that's something, placers are always looking for cues for why you should be at a certain location. And if fuel, transport, and fire safety is part of that, make sure that we know that. Make sure you put that in your placement questionnaire. It's obvious with camps like Illville and Lakes on the Playa because they're well-known fire camps, but you might just be starting out. And I think that's important to highlight for us so that we can accommodate. I'm going to throw another question out, and then we can open it up for questions. This last question is just how is it different to how is fire different from the other things that you're doing in your camp, in your experience, you know, about organizing it, about running it, around the interactivity around it? Safety obviously is one issue, but should there be other things people think about as they're considering fire that's really different from running a bar or, you know, running other things out of your camp? Twister.
Sorry, guys. Sobriety. That's different from running a bar. And it's an absolute must. You know, we're playing with fire.
And I'd like to add that sobriety is like a 100% like zero tolerance. It's not like just a little bit, you know, like it was just a whip it, or it was just a drink, or, you know, like I do fine when I'm on ecstasy. I do fine when I'm on acid. Like that's not like when the BLM shows up and takes your blood because a thing happened. They don't care. Like, you know, like someone walks up later and was like, oh, I saw him hit that whip it and do that thing. You're going to wish you'd never done that. And you're, you know, and like, I wander around with way too much of my time worrying about things like that in the late hours of night when you think I should have gone to bed. I haven't. Ask Twister. It's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, just like one because it's 4 a.m. and it's late, or like a bump because it's 4 a.m. and it's late. It's never okay. And it will affect, because like if I come to your camp and like you had one and thought it was okay, I'm going to do the worst thing that I can do at that point, which is go tell Level that you did that. And next year, like Level will take that fine. You know, it's, you know, everyone thinks that BLM is my big hammer, but it's not. It's like BLM will come and take care of somebody today, but Level will never forget. So it's a zero tolerance type thing, because it's, you know, comes back on the camp people who signed that application. It comes back on, you know, the organization. It comes back to the people who hold the licenses that allow us to do this, which there's a lot of people who hold different, you know, from the camp level up, insurances and license and permits and everything like that. And it could ruin it all. So it's a real zero thing.
Thanks, Bacon. Yes, I am an elephant when it comes to remembering everything. And so is my team. Rick and Grumps, I think you had a way you want to answer this question too.
I guess it's somewhat similar to running a bar. Like there's a lot of spreadsheets and it's costly and stuff, but like I think on the other side it's difficult with organization, because you have to really think about how people flow around your flame effects and plan for like a lot of people occasionally, and to also make that look good and have a nice flow. It took us a little bit, I think, to get the hang of. There's a lot of trenching hoses, so like keeping your plumbing and like hose it plan somewhat simple is really nice. Like you'll find that some things are just like easy to set up next to each other. I don't know.
People who like digging trenches is
Yeah, find someone who
interesting.
likes digging trenches.
We actually have some people that do. They love it. I think, yeah, we actually do. We were to a bar and the flame effects, so we have some experience with both. And it is, you know, it's heavy. It's a lot of work. The build and setup is a lot of work, and then your commitment to it every night is also a fair amount of work. Like I don't know, sunset time, I'm busy every single night of the burn. So there's no just roaming off and having fun. It's be back to camp. Even if I'm not doing fire watch, I'm back to make sure things are working and are right and are not leaking or doing anything wrong. So it's a lot of commitment.
Yeah, there's definitely that anxiety that Bacon mentions. Like I always check on things, and you have to be really comfortable with being that bad guy that turns everything off because Firewatch didn't show up or they showed up not sober, and that's gonna happen, and you have to accept that, and whatever, people disperse pretty quickly, like rather than be safe.
Great tips. Thank you for sharing all that. I wanted to open it up now for folks that were interested in just sort of asking open questions. It could be something specific that your camp's considering. It could be, specific to an experience you had on Playa that relates to fire. Earlier in the night, if I don't see a hand come up, okay, actually, Willie Ray, why don't you go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks. Quick question for you guys about fire extinguishers, right? So we typically carry, we have 4, right? So we have a tent. We've got 1 in each corner of the tent that stays there permanently, right, for the burn. Any other recommendations about types, size, type of repellent, all that stuff?
I know bacon probably has like the specifics, but just a bunch of the red ABCs. The silver water ones are really nice as well. And then like if you have some statics that are really accessible to people, having like wet towels and buckets around them is a nice call too.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a bare minimum ABC fire extinguishers are what you want to have because they're kind of your Swiss Army knife of fire extinguishers. It's nice to have them clearly marked. A lot of people have a fire extinguisher, but it's just sitting over there in the corner near some pillows. Getting fire extinguishers up to eye level and well marked. People who do this really well is the barbecue for multiple reasons. But if you get them up to eye level, you get them marked red, people will see them, people will use them, people will self-deputize themselves to make sure your camp doesn't burn down. If you put a person out with an ABC fire extinguisher, they will be happy you put them out. But they will have to go get that wound cleaned out of all that now dry chem that doesn't belong inside of their body. They will be less grateful at that point, but still grateful. Having a water fire extinguisher, towels that are wet, duvet cloths, stuff like that will help you if you have somebody who sets themselves on fire. And people find interesting and dumb ways to set themselves on fire. The event that I work for here in Detroit is a Halloween event, and we've had people find interesting ways to set themselves on fire in Halloween costumes, which is interesting. But Burning Man is much the same thing where people wear not the best fireproof materials out and about and get in situations. So you could have somebody who has, a walking staff that has fire on it, or somebody who's just smoking a cigarette or something like that. And, all of a sudden you got somebody with a polyester coat on fire. You'd be like, oh man, I got to put them out with an ABC fire extinguisher, but I bet you they're going to have regrets later. Would have been nicer if I put them out with water. Also something that like really isn't deep into our purview all the time, but if you have a kitchen, maybe bring a K fire extinguisher for that, because what goes on in your kitchen requires a special fire extinguisher for grease fires and stuff like that, and it's nice to think that little bit far in advance. I'm not going to tell you that an ABC fire extinguisher won't, help you out in that situation. The water fire extinguisher will not. Don't do that. Go watch a YouTube video of that. You will be both terrified and amazed and glad you watched a video of it, not saw it in person. So, think about adding Ks to your kitchen, ABCs. And I know everybody's like, it ruins my aesthetic, man. Fire safety is a very poor aesthetic, but also burning your camp down is also a poor aesthetic. So getting them up and mounted with signs will help them be more useful. The size is kind of like, an interesting sliding scale, because a 2.5 pound fire extinguisher is not going to do you a lot of fun. On fire extinguishers, you'll see a little code, and they have a set of numbers, and they tell you on there, this is good for this much of this type of fire and that much of that type of fire and this much of this type of fire. Generally, I think the real sweet spot on fire extinguisher are 10 pounders. They're big enough to move around easily with, but they're also big enough to be effective if you have plenty of them. Like if you had one 10 pounder, probably not going to be great for you, because like most fires aren't a 10-pound fire if you've really had a problem. Like a lot of smoldering starting fires or small fires are a 10-pound fire. I'd rather have one 10-pound than 2.5 pounds. So I'd say start at 10 pounds, because their mobility, get them up, get them high, get more fire extinguishers than you think that you need. It's not something that you will regret, and keep them in good service. If they're serviceable ones, if you buy them from a fire extinguisher company, get them retagged every year. It's $5. Every couple of years, you have to pay a little bit of money to get them recertified or get them swapped out. If you buy them from a big box store, they last longer, but check them regularly. Not just when you take them out of the shipping container or out of the truck, but loop back to them during the week. Maybe make it your thing like, hey, did some jerk set off the fire extinguisher last night and now I don't have a fire extinguisher there? Because I've had that happen. People are like, look at this. This is a fun and expensive toy for me to ruin. If you, not that it matters as much on the desert, but like near where I have sound and lighting equipment that could catch on fire, I like to put a CO2 fire extinguisher, because those will put out an electrical fire without, technically, they'll put out an equipment fire. There's a whole other debate there, but they'll put out that equipment fire without me having to send every piece of one of those rental equipment back out for cleaning. But, in the desert, everything's dusty and dusty needs to get cleaned anyway. So that's probably a very long answer for what type of fire extinguisher. But
No, it's great, and I appreciate it. Yeah, we do a lot of what you said, but a couple of nuggets in there for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Bacon. Go for it.
I'd like to throw something in from earlier when I was out of the room when we were talking about applications. Also, for people who are doing applications, if you have like a UL rated device, that is not a flame effect. You still a flame thing, but it is not a flame effect that you need to get inspected. So like if it came from Costco or Home Depot, or something like that, it's, that's not a flame effect. And I believe on the application, I haven't gone through the application in a minute, but I believe there's a way to distinguish between a burn barrel and like an actual like burning thing. Because there's a lot of times I come out to a camp that you're on my paperwork and I'm like, hey, you haven't come in yet. And I show up and they're like, well, I just have this burn barrel, or I just have this upright heater that came from Costco. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take you off my list. But I still drove all the way out there to see you, to be like, oh, okay, let's do a little bit of education. And normally it's because somebody who's not even there filled out the app months ago and was just like, I don't know, maybe we'll have fire. So that's just the thing on that too. It would save me a lot of time if I didn't come out to look at everybody's burn barrel, although some of them are very, very pretty. And I believe when we were talking about the airport, there was a question about getting away from burn barrels. You can there are a lot of people who got away from burn barrels and burning wood and everything like that by building small, what we would call static flame effects, where, just to loop back that to real quick, where like you can even put a small flame effect that's just holding a static flame inside of your old burn barrel. And that way you're burning propane. But if you didn't buy it from Home Depot, we'd still need to come out there and look at it and make sure that you're still, up to snuff and up to spec and doing everything safe. But those inspections it's longer for me to say hello, as you can probably imagine, and say goodbye with my Midwestern values than it is to actually inspect the piece.
That's great, Bacon. Thanks for looping around to that question. It looks like Sander has his hand up, so go for it, Sander.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for doing this. In our camp, we have a group of folks who are very enamored with and interested in inverted propane art pieces. And I just wanted to ask, because I don't have a lot of experience with those, although they're very pretty. Are there any additional safety concerns or things that I should be asking them about as we sort of figure out if this is something we want to do?
What do you mean, inverted?
Well, so the way that I've seen them, it's usually some sort of very high up canopy. And my understanding, I don't know exactly how it works, but they're feeding propane from the top, and then it doesn't have a lot of oxygen. So it sort of makes these almost like liquid displays across the top.
Yeah, commonly known as a hippie heater.
Yeah, but they're like the ceiling's on fire. From a fire safety perspective, they're almost easier to manage because they're usually up above people and they don't like walk into them. But that also means that your structure should be really stable. Geodesic domes are pretty common for those, but
Yeah, like Incendia.
Incendia is really great.
Fire and Balance a few years ago. They both were beautiful. Also expect a lot of carbon snow.
Yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to ask about is I've seen people coming out, and myself included, where you have little bits of soot on your face, and I was just worried if that's an issue. That's just normal.
Yeah, because as you mentioned it, I mean, you're running so kind of weird with the propane. The propane's wants to fall, it catches itself on fire, it goes back up and has nowhere to go, and it just creates a bunch of carbon and soot up underneath because it's burning poorly. So yeah, but they're beautiful. They really are. I actually have one like halfway done in my backyard that might get done someday. I don't know. We'll see.
That good thing is something you can tune for. You're always going to get some, but a well-designed one will have less.
Yeah.
And that's a bunch of time spent in your backyard figuring it out.
And also, I've seen camps that have had those who have literally had a daily routine of vacuuming the ply underneath and then shipping all that they've collected home. They would sift out some of like the playa out, but so that they collected all the soot, especially like some of the larger fire ceilings. They would vacuum the playa up in the morning to make sure that they gathered up all the soot so they weren't just grinding soot into the playa every night. So I think the soot is a big consideration. Making sure that if an idiot went underneath there and put their hand up and jumped up, they wouldn't put their hand into the fire, because a smart person wouldn't do that. But I think that's a concern to have. And then often I don't see like readily accessible shutoffs with those. Everyone's trying to hide all the plumbing on them because they want a clean look. And I'm like, okay, if this goes wrong, how do I turn this off? And they point 25 feet away and say, it's the shutoff's over there. And I'm saying, that's great. Do you have another one in your box? Because I'd like one right here for if something bad goes here, you can shut it off here. Not, how long would it take you to run over there? Because that whole time you're running, someone is burning. So that would be the big consideration, is that like there's a place near the device, because fire ceilings seem to often forget that because they're so busy hiding the plumbing to get a clean aesthetic. And then I just show up at Playa and I ruin it. So, it's, and like often on their drawings, so they had one on their drawings, but when they built it, it just didn't look pretty. And that safety before the safety aesthetic isn't the prettiest, but it's the most important. So.
Great, thank you guys.
Shah also, I think, wants to jump in with a response.
Yeah, I basically had wanted to say what Bacon had said about having a shutoff valve really close to the piece and possibly piping your plumbing, your gas away from the device. We have the same, it's called Mesmerize in the center of our village. And people get really excited and the tanks start to freeze over. And if you don't have someone right there watching your tank and being really on that piece, the hippies will go over and try to turn up the gas. They don't understand that the flame is diminishing because the tank, it's not sublimating. So you really need to just keep in mind where those access points are to your fuel and the piece itself, and have a shut off, at every available point.
Great, thank you.
You should make the like manifolds and adjustment knobs like feel really awkward for someone to run up to and touch. Like they should feel scared, put like warning stuff all over it. And then like clearly mark your shutoffs, but like everything else, people shouldn't help themselves to. Icing is definitely a problem when you get into this. We chose to get like cattle troughs and water bath our tanks with a water heater that I think Bacon made us change. But yeah.
Thanks, everyone. It's still question time. So I don't know if there's another question out there for a panel or a story that someone might want to say yourself about something you've tried in your camp when it comes to fire.
Actually, I did have a question, and some of it is out of my own ignorance because I haven't read what's online and available, but how much propane can you have in your camp that you're, so to speak, actively using? It's, so to speak, being burnt, but obviously some of it isn't going to actually be hooked up.
The preference is that you have as much propane in your camp that you need for one night of operation. That more propane than that creates a safety risk, less propane than that causes no fun to happen. So if you are on an Esplanade camp, you know, there's larger storage options that could become available. If you're inside the city, as previously mentioned, you've got to huff all that stuff out to the depot. But the expectation is that you will do that daily, and you should plan accordingly. Make friends with an art car. And the other thing is too is when you're bringing in your steel, look at your DOT drivers if you have any, because they can bring you more steel than your non-DOT people can. But you know, you want to bring your tanks accordingly too, so that you have enough tanks and tanks that are manageable. But yeah, as much as you're going to use in one night. And if I show up and you've got like a field of tanks, I'm going to be like, what are you doing? Because, you know, nobody wants to see that go south, especially the hazardous material guys over at ESD.
Yeah, so just follow-up question. Does the fuel depot, does Hell's store fuel for you? Or, I mean, obviously, even my kitchen has more, my galley, you know, has more than 1 week's worth of propane in it. So where do I keep the fuel? If it's not safe or it's not practical to keep several days worth of fuel in camp.
Well, Health Station can refill your tank. So when I say steel, it means that you should have enough physical storage tanks for one night of operation. And then you take those tanks out to Health Station and get them refilled daily. When they're in your camp, they should be stored in a secure depot that is fenced off from people, away from tents and away from your kitchen. People, for some reason, love to put their fuel depots for all their fuel on the backside of their kitchen, which is where you're most likely to have a fire in your camp, is in your kitchen. You also, you know, don't want to store it in a vehicle. I don't particularly love seeing propane tanks snuggling with gasoline tanks. It's not my favorite thing to see, but you're going to have a fuel depot, but, maybe don't intermix them into each other to create some type of checkered board for ESD if they have a problem. But yeah, you should have it fenced off so that just any hippie can't walk into your fuel depot area. Clearly marked fire extinguishers, distance from other things, away from combustibles, no smoking signs. Anything else I'm forgetting, Twister?
No, there is an absolute hard limit on how much propane you can have in camp. I went to get that number for you. It's been a little while since the last burn, and the page isn't available on the website right now. So it will be there under fuel and hazmat storage, and you can find it there. The other part, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that I think it's not up there anymore because there's been some hemming and hawing about what that number is between ESD, FAST, and fuel. We all ended up having a different number at one point. So that the last determination I heard was for one night of operation.
Yeah. And so the other point that I was going to make is if you go to that one night of operation model, you don't have to maintain a fuel storage depot anymore. That's less work. So it works for both sides.
Great. It looks like there is another question from Silver Fox. He just put it in chat, or she, I'm not sure which. But yeah, about a fabric material where that fire can burn through. Silver Fox, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Maybe
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm in the dark here.
There you go.
I'm not really I went just once to Burning Man, and after that, my group, we started a camp in Burning Man. It's called Brasa Camp. We serve food in fireplace, and we are planning some other steps after that. And I was just wondering if someone knows here how, I don't remember the name of the camp, but how the Indians, I think it's a camp of Indians that they have domes, and they have fabrics in the top of the domes, and they put fire from the roof through the fabrics, black fabrics, and there is a fire like floating in the roof of the dome, and that's really beautiful. And I don't know if that's a secret, and then sorry to ask, but I was really curious about that because it's incredible.
So I think you're talking about Incendia. To my knowledge, Bacon may know differently, but to my knowledge, those are metal. They just look like fabric.
Okay.
You could
Yeah,
potentially
the
use
ceiling tiles at Incendia are all metal, and they take them apart and put them together every time they put that dome together. But when you go up there, it's all metal up, everything up there. They have like lanterns hanging down, a real red aesthetic with a bunch of small domes around the outside.
And you're not alone thinking it's fabric. The number of panicked people that have buttonholed me and told me there's someone with fabric on fire in a dome. So
it's the soot. It's the soot that gives it that fabric-y look.
Yeah.
All that charcoal soot.
Yeah, there's
Thanks
a
lot for the information.
Sounds like there's a lot of illusion that goes into making fire, but you can't pretend that fabric can't burn. Great, we are getting close towards the end of this event, so I want to leave it open in case there's other questions out there. I think earlier there were a couple folks that unmuted. So Sonic Tribe, I don't know if you want to speak up if there was something that felt relevant. And I know there's a lot of other folks on this call too.
Well, when I was chiming in earlier, the person was talking about having fire performers in their camp, and it was on that topic. And was just gonna say to we had that specifically designed to have a kind of a mini conclave that camped with us, and we had a stage. We were gonna have it, be as a presentation piece, but the first night of fire was big learning curve. That even if you have pretty good fire people and they have a fire plan, that things change that first night with what I saw, and I had to be the guy to that call it for the night, no more fire, and you had to be real firm with it. And it came back, but I figured out that just because you have a fire crew in your camp, when you haven't fire performers that are near any kind of stage or whatever, you need to have camp managers or other people involved. And unfortunately, you just need to have people that are just not afraid to say no in that situation. It all worked out, but that was what it was back when that topic was going on.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think if there's any lesson that people take away here is to have people that are in charge, have authority, and can keep things under control while sober, and if you're going to run fire in your camp. Bacon, did you want to say anything? I'd like to just give each of the panelists a chance to then start wrapping things up. If you have a closing comment or thing you want to make sure people are imparted with. So Bacon, go for it.
Well, actually, it was kind of something that I was kind of hoping to hear back from people tonight, to kind of hear how they pick their fire leads, because a lot of times, like, I get fire leads that aren't there, or fire leads that, like, they're the managers themselves, and I'm kind of curious if do most of the people here, are you the people that are managers looking to put fire into your camp, or are you people who are looking to be fire leads for your camp? Because often when the two things are combined, it's too much work for one person, because, like, the fire really does need a lot of attention and planning and stuff like that. So I try to encourage people to have someone that is going to follow all the way to Playa with you, who, if they don't have the experience, has the time to go out and find a mentor and get that experience and have that independent education we talked about. So I was kind of interested in, like, how people felt about that process and how they filled that slot. Is kind of a question I had for the participants.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we don't have to wrap up now, but can people answer that? Looks like Amy wrote something in the chat already. Amy, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and just speak it and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I'll try. My internet sucks, and I blame the children. They're stealing it all. But if I freeze, I apologize. I run Martini Village, so we don't have a ton of fire, but we have recently incorporated a big metal martini glass structure that at night has a flaming olive in it, which brings in all of these. We have to fill out the application, we have to have the fire extinguishers, we have to do everything. But what I was just saying is I'm not in charge of the fire. I run the village, and the gentleman who built the flaming olive and he knows the ins and outs of it and how to run it safety and to do it. He's in charge of all that. So he fills out that part of the application for me. And he's always there when it's lit to start it, and he's there to turn it off, and to make sure. So kind of that divide and conquer type thing.
That's great. Other folks, is there, I mean, maybe just of a show of hands, is there anyone here that is the fire expert in your camp and how you were designated that? So I see John. John, do you want to say a little bit about how it works for Moon Cheese?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So this is actually only going to be my second burn, but I guess I got put in charge of kind of redesigning our entire front lawn. So I'm just pretty much the most, I guess, the most handy person in our camp. So I do a lot of woodworking and a little bit of metalworking, and done some propane work. Just built out a van and done propane for a stove and heater, and pretty simple stuff, but I have the time in the shop to really kind of expand upon our opportunities this year. So we've got a fun budget to kind of redesign our whole layout. So I'm planning on doing a new sign and want to add a handful of flame effects. So been just getting in touch with people through the camp who we have one very kind of small flamethrower on the top of our current sign, but really hoping to expand upon that as I've learned more about this will be my first poofer to put together. But as I've dug into it, I feel like I understand the mechanics of it pretty well. Excited to kind of get my first small scale test going here pretty soon. And yeah, would like to do a handful. So like to do 3, 4 plus, depending on time and resources, and kind of see where things are in the next few months, and make sure that I have a solid team around me, and got a lot of really beneficial information from this so far. But yeah, that's kind of how our team has gone about it. Just kind of my handiness, ability to build things, that kind of put me in that position. But we have a large camp, so we have, we have a whole kitchen crew each night. So I made some good notes, have at least 1 or 2 people that will have their main responsibility be flame effects. And kind of my thinking is just not that they'll be the only one responsible if something goes wrong, but they'll kind of be the lead person. So again, I want to go through the whole camp. Will know where all our fire extinguishers are, on-off valves are, kind of what to do in emergency, but kind of having one point person on top of that was the way I was thinking about it. But open to feedback, and would love to hear if I'm thinking about anything in the wrong way.
Thanks, John.
I think a good thing, John, with appointing people for Firewatch, and Rick and Grumps can jump in on this too, is about setting up, beforehand, but also like, something like a quick, point list you can go through, hopefully written out beforehand, that you can train somebody on the spot to, like, this is where this stuff is, so that if you're handing off to somebody and you go through that checklist every night, like, these where the fire extinguishers are, these where the shutoffs are, like, this is how you operate the safety, and this is our safety procedures. That going through that overnight keeps both you and your operator fresh. And if for some reason, if Grumps doesn't show up and you've got to get, somebody to come over and run it, that, what you need to make sure you touch every point with them. And like, if it's somebody that didn't help you set it up, that you go and you help put hands on things, so that muscle memory is there. Because it's all about, the reason why they start teaching us stop, drop, and roll when we're small children is so that we remember when we're panicked. So that muscle memory is really important. So that's something to keep in mind too.
Awesome. Great feedback. Appreciate that.
Rick and Grumps looked like you wanted to also add something.
I think that sums it up. Is they don't necessarily have to know how to turn them on even, or like how they work really, just how they get shut off and how to, where the first aid kits are too. Actually, like having burn kits accessible is pretty nice too. I know that didn't get talked about, but usually people like to try to light cigarettes off things or something and burn themselves.
Usually for our camp, we do one or two, I guess per year, really, more or less fast classes. Fire art safety, how the Syncytium stuff, or how our camps things work. Just to make sure, like our manifolds are pretty complex, so like to just walk up to it, most people, not everybody, but a lot of people wouldn't know what the hell was going on with them. So, getting people to understand how those work is a good move for us, and allows us to have not, it does allow me to walk away from camp once in a while, even if I do accidentally bring the fire
The
badge with me
placard.
and Bacon comes and shuts us down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Do safety classes. We kind of have we do on Playa we do safety fire or training classes and safety classes. We're a fire camp. We try to make sure everybody really understands that, and that it's not just my job or the person on watch their job. That doesn't always work for everybody. Not everybody always pays that 100% attention. Let's be honest. Things are happening at burns where they're not always paying the best attention. But that said, I've seen people in our camp stop things from happening that could have potentially been not great. Just because they know to look out for it.
I've seen them take care of things at other camps too. Like I've had our camp members turn off people's like unwatched flame effects, and that made me happy.
I love to hear about those.
Birdman had a question, maybe.
Yeah. I'm a new poofer, and I'm still in the bigger is better stage still. And I use this book. You can't see it, it's in reverse. It's by Tim Diggin. He's a burner. Have you seen this called Make Fire? The Art and Science of Working with Propane. And it's a good coaching book on how to build a safe fire effect of several different kinds. And I would like to recommend it. And of course, because of that, I feel that I'm the expert out at BRTA now. Well, with maybe the exception of those rogue individuals that have obviously built flame effects before but I got interested last year, and I think if you've got the space and you've got the wherewithal, you got people that will help, then flame effects are like, I just really love them. And they don't have to be constant. They don't have to be overpowering. And I'll learn finesse. I know, but I didn't get a chance working with Salvage and his Recycle Ops art car, the mutant vehicle. And we're going to try and put some flame effects on that vehicle this year. Trusting we burn, but that's some of the things that I'm going and looking forward to and trying to grow and experience and give with.
That's fantastic. I know everyone's always thinking of how to make their camps bigger and more interesting and fun. And so sometimes that's about fire, and sometimes that's about some new activity. Twister, and then I'm going to start winding us down. So Twister, go for it.
I'm going to cover a couple of things then. First, Birdman. It's great that you have a book. I'm psyched that there's information out there. Just be aware that the things that you learned in that book may or may not be the regulations that we have. And so checking in ahead, explaining what you learned in the book and how you built it lets us tweak your plans in a way that's going to be most successful on Playa. Second thing is about the culture of fire, right? And this has a couple of parts. One, if you've got people that are going to be fire watch later, putting them in an apprentice program and inviting them to work with you when you're setting up your flame effects is one of the best investments you can make. Because A, you have help, and B, they end up with more knowledge of your system than they would if they were just dragged in and handed a sheet or something like that. The other culture of fire thing, and I've seen this, everyone comes into Burning Man with a million plans and they want the biggest and they are gonna just kick ass and they're so psyched. That may or may not be realistic. So as if you're a theme camp organizer, one of the things you really need is a flame effects person that is willing to say no to you. And I have seen flame effects people get into very dangerous situations because they had a guy at the top who was putting unreasonable pressure on them to be open on a given night. And it just didn't work out that way. Being able to say no, likewise, I mean, it comes in different ways, but better to say no than to blow up. And so just to cover one more thing before I go, we haven't covered so far. Bacon talked earlier about putting a propane device in a burn barrel, which takes care of your wood and it takes care of the rest, and that works really well. The other way that people do that is various low to the ground hippie heaters. And they're okay, but you have to be really careful about perimeter there. Polyester, long flowing, in the breeze polyester, your night could turn really bad really quickly. And so we want as much fire as possible. We just want you to have in mind the things that keep people safe, because burning hippies smells so bad, right? So I'm so psyched to see everyone doing fire. We want to help. Let's rock.
Thanks, Twister. How do I guess if people have questions beyond tonight and an event like this, what's the way they contact either someone at FAST or just gets a hold of someone to answer questions?
So what is it? Flame effects at burningman.org, Bacon?
I think flame effects.
Flame effects.
And I thought both were active. And I think FAST also goes to the larger group also.
Yeah. So that's
I haven't got an email in a while, so I know a lot of
we're all a little rusty here, right?
Yeah.
And just to be really clear on it, we're not there, and we can't, because of liability issues, teach you how to make a flame effect. You got to go out and figure that out. We can show you what the regulations are, and they are pretty, cut and dry. So as you start to plan, that's where we can help.
Thanks. So I want to give every panelist a chance now to give any parting words before we all hop off, and then kind of pitch one more thing before we end the event. So can I call on Rick and Grumps?
Anything?
No, just thank you everybody for your interest, and I look forward to seeing a lot more fire on Playa, because it's kind of boring being one of only a few camps left that are burning at Burning Man.
Yeah, I'd love to help enable as many folks as possible to bring fire to Playa, and I'd love to hear about what their major blockers are, because it seems to be getting darker on the fire side and just more LEDs, which I love too, but fire's special to me, so.
Yeah, that's great. Keeping the flame burning. Is there a way people could contact you all if they want, or?
I think we have a Facebook, but it's our camp name, Syncytium. We should probably I think we might have a Lakes on the Playa one too.
There's also syncytium.camp@gmail.com, which Syncytium, for nobody can spell it. Most of our members can't spell it. It's SYNCYTIUM.
All right, hopefully Brady Cat or someone can catch that and type that in the chat.
Yeah, I'll type it.
Okay, great. Shah, is there any parting words that you have for everyone here?
I would just like to say to anybody who's not made a flame effect yet and they want to start, don't reinvent the wheel for your first project. And if you do have a small fire camp, and you're looking for a mentor, or you want some more information about maybe joining a larger village, feel free to reach out to me. at illuminationvillage@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to see what I can do as an organizing person with connections to help you make that happen.
Thank you, Shah. Yeah, you said you had over 40 projects going on there.
Yeah.
And I'll let Bacon wrap it up.
The first thing I'd love to say is communicate. Email us early and often. Like I said, I'm not getting a lot of emails right now, but there's still some that trickle through. Just because we're not on Playa, this past year doesn't mean that we're not still here. We're still willing to help get directions to you. Start getting those things. If you're like, this is what I want to do, we're still here to help. We are way slower at responding. I had to look up what the actual password to my email was today because I was looking at it not on my phone. Something that we didn't come up today, but just to cover, because it's something that I've had to say and it clicks in with not reinventing the wheel. I've had a couple people last time we were on Playa who wanted to reinvent the wheel and figured that I'll just do liquid fire. We don't do that in theme camps. If you want to have fire in your camp, start with being safe. Figure out how you're going to have fire safely, and then figure out how to have fire after that. It is not a place where we put safety third. I want to have everybody have as much fire as possible, but we have to do it safely. I literally lose sleep thinking about the fact that we have fire in a camp tent city the size that we do. And it's my job to make sure that we have as much as possible. And I sit there happy at the end of the week looking at how much fire we had inside the city. So as much as it causes me nightmare, it also causes me joy. But send in as much documentation as you can. If you send us too much documentation, you will be the first, because I just gobble up documentation. When I send a fire permit into a fire marshal, they get 70 pages from me. I'm not saying every one of you needs to send me 70 pages because I will die. But, the more information I have, the better. Drawings, even if you start off a drawing and it is a photocopy of something you drew and wrote down with pen and paper, not everything needs to be a blueprint. I mean, when people send me stuff that looks like they were engineering, a building, it's sometimes easy to read. Sometimes I'm like, have to touch back and be like, okay, what were you saying here? But even the people just send me in like something you drew with a pen and paper, it gets us talking. It gets me knowing what you're doing. The drawing of your effect is just as important as the drawing of it where it is in your camp. Flame effects don't exist in a two-dimensional, one-dimensional space. They exist in reality in your camp, and like where they are in your camp, how traffic moves around, how people interact with your flame effect is just as important as where your propane tanks are stored and how much gas you're using, and whether that's a walk 300 or a walk 600. The thing that a lot of people who are starting with flame effects, they want to try to figure out like how they can have the biggest flame effect possible to begin with. And it's really start with like cutting your teeth on a flame effect and making an artistic element to your camp, not just, I got a flame effect. Because a big flame effect, as Rick and Grumps will tell you, is also super expensive for your camp, and you will burn through a lot of money before you know it. I don't know how much propane Illumination Village spends money on, but I bet you I could buy a house in Detroit for what they spend annually on propane. So start big, build from there, start artistic, build from there, safety first, and communicate, because we're here to help you. We are all fire artists. We want all the things to be, on fire. And if you're like, I don't know the answer to this, please don't guess, communicate. We will help you. So communicate. That's all I got.
Yeah, thanks, Bacon. Yeah, communicate with FAST. If you can't get to FAST, communicate to placement. We're also always here to help facilitate the right connections. And I know Bratty Cat's been sharing a lot of different resources and guides and emails. So thank you for doing that, Bratty Cat. I I do want to do 2 more plugs. One is, I mentioned at the start, there is an Art Speaks tomorrow from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific. If you can't get enough of fire and want to hear more about it, but from the art side of things, they're having a talk tomorrow. So Dave X will be there, Doxy, who's also part of the FAST team, and then a couple fire artists from the Open Playa. So I highly recommend that. And I also want to just plug this series. We're planning to do this every month. This is the 3rd, and we're hoping to do it every 3rd Thursday of the month. So we're pulling together the calendar for the rest of the year. I know there's a lot of unknowns about what's going on in the world right now. Is there going to be a burn? Just know we are doing our best to think of all the ways to make a burn happen. And you'll get a lot more information about that in a month's time. So please just stay tuned, be patient, and start dreaming up ideas, because it looks like I said in the email about this, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and just a matter of time until we get there. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And I hope you all can join us for the next one. We'll have a really great topic then. And final thank you to all of our panelists for stepping in and sharing all your wisdom. This has been a fantastic evening. So much love to you all. Have a great, I think there's folks from all around the world. So have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are.
Thanks, Level.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Communicate.
Communicate. All right, it's ending. Goodbye.